All right. Welcome, everybody, to another Microsoft Unboxed podcast. This is episode 32. I'm your host today, Kareem Anderson. I'm joined by.
David Allen. I hope everybody out there is doing well today.
Yeah, we have another great podcast for you. This one is, we were just talking about off mic, a little bit light on the Microsoft news. Microsoft's been relatively quiet over the past couple of weeks. Again, this is kind of rolling into fall where I'm sure we'll be getting news, hot and heavy about Windows stuff coming up pretty soon as they release the big anticipated Windows update. That'll bring some more Copilot stuff. We'll start, eventually getting testing of Recall, I think at some point next month. So get ready for that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure there'll be tons of talk about that and whatever security measures they've done to fix things. They are in court for some different things. Nothing super egregious right now, but I'm sure we'll be getting to talk about that. We'll be getting into some gaming talk, again, further down the road. But for now, for this week, let me give you the headlines. Let me let you know we are going to be talking about, not the things that we might be talking about in the future. As of this week, Microsoft decided to shut down X Ambassador. For those of you who don't know what that is, we will let you know what it is and why it's kind of a big hit for Xbox enthusiasts and gamers around the world. We're also going to be talking about uh, Microsoft offering a new wave of Copilot updates, mostly for businesses. But this is the big pitch, and Dave and I both agree that I think this is where Microsoft really wants to put more of their investments into Copilot. Yes, they will continue to provide stuff like for consumer versions of Windows and Bing and things like that. But this is where they can make instant revenue. We'll talk about those features coming out. We'll be talking about Apple finally getting FDA approval, even though they released a watch without it. But they made up for it right at the release. I believe they're actually releasing devices today, tomorrow, or yesterday, sometime this week.
Today,
Yeah, today. Out, you can go out and get your iPhone 16. So they had perfect timing. We'll also be talking about Intel, as we have for like the past 3 weeks. But we got some good news. This isn't the downer episode of Intel. We got some good news for on the Intel front about how they're spinning out their Foundry business, and kind of the long process that it's taken to get here. And they took one step back when they lost one business, but kind of jumped two steps forward when they got another business, a very big one. We'll get into details about that. We're also be talking about the Microsoft Windows app. I think it kind of fell off our radar. Microsoft put it back on because they officially released it for Macs, iOS devices, and Android. We'll get into what that is. We'll also be talking about a subscription-free version of Office before you start getting your wallets out to try and pay for this, or rush to get back to your nostalgic days of the early 2000s where you can buy a box copy of Windows. It's not for you, unfortunately. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about Microsoft's new Fluent design efforts. Yes, Microsoft is undergoing another visual design refresh, and we'll get into the details about that and what our thoughts are on this new version of it. With all that being said, I'm tired of talking. You get us into our first headline, our first story, please.
alrighty, I would be glad to, my friend. Let's see. We have, let me get my correct notes up here. Here we go. We have the Xbox Ambassador Program, as my buddy Kareem mentioned, is unfortunately closing down October the 15th. And if you're not familiar with what the Xbox Ambassador Program was, I thought the program was pretty cool. You basically had a group of people that were highlighted in the forums, the Xbox support forums, that would help people out if you had issues or needed solutions for a problem or needed help with a game. They would also run small tournaments, maybe host some games for new players. They were kind of your welcome to Xbox crew. And I guess now Microsoft has kind of said Xbox has grown, exponentially since the Xbox Ambassador Program was introduced 13 years ago. And they say, hey, maybe we don't need these ambassadors any longer. And some of the ambassadors did get reward points and special perks along the way. So if you were an ambassador, you have until the 15th of October to claim those rewards before they are gone. And Xbox is asking that the ambassadors join the Xbox Insiders program, which, as you know, gets you the surveys and the Xbox releases before they go public. You know, I get it. I understand what this was for. I understand why it was here. I think this is a bad time to kill it though, because there's just not been a whole lot of positive Xbox news with the layoffs, the studio shutdowns, coming in the past few months. And now here's another fan-based program that has been axed basically. I get it. Maybe you don't need it, but I think it's just bad timing to throw this out. I feel like, now we've reached the point of we've cut the employees. Now we're cutting the extra services. Was the Xbox Ambassador program really costing them that much? And maybe it's not related to some of the cuts that we've seen with Xbox, but it just rubs me the wrong way that we've cut the jobs. Now we're cutting the little perky type services that we have offered gamers. I don't feel good about it.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Optics are, everything these days, and the Xbox has had several bad ones over this entire summer. It feels like you said, mentioning the layoffs, the studio shutdowns. I think there was a profile done on Sarah Bond just recently, and it's a great one. It's a good one. It's fun if you're looking for tidbits on how the inner workings work. She has a note in there about how she has trouble communicating with the team per se, but not in a super bad way, just kind of in an efficiency way. Like she says that she meets with Phil Spencer, he says something, but she's not quite sure because his way of communicating and her way of doing things. So she had like a post-it note that she put on her computer that says, "You are not paid to do what he says. You're paid to do what he means." Because apparently he says stuff, but he also means something different. That came out I think today or last night or something like that. It just kind of shows that the Xbox team is working maybe not as efficiently as it could be. To your point, back to the ex ambassador thing, I think if I had to, try and attack this from a business perspective, the ex ambassadorship could have been seen as a liability for Microsoft because again, this is fan based essentially. While it did offer, achievements for people who were achievement junkies or whatnot, and it was somewhat structured, it was still kind of loosely run by individuals who signed up for it. I think the way that they're doing it now by integrating with the insider team, that they can manage more of those achievements, more of those programs, more of those sweepstakes, more of those events if they're going to have them in the future, and then allow the people who are fans who would have been the ambassadors running some of these set programs to not be legally liable for anything outside of the Xbox community guidelines or whatnot. That's my super generous take on this. But I think at the end of the day, to your point, it doesn't look good to be like, hey, we have
No,
fans, we have extreme fans who want to do this, who are taking time out of their own, work days, lives, families, things like that to kind of be a participant in this. And now you're saying, all right, we don't need you anymore. Those fans, while they may still play Xbox, that voice has now been kind of silenced, and there won't be anybody to pitch for you when you have a string of bad optics like you're currently having.
I just don't like. Well, I think Xbox needs, and I'm going to button it here, but I think Xbox needs to do something and to get some positive mojo going their way. Now they keep
They need
promising that by
they
the
need a direction. I think at the end
yeah
of the day, we saw that they were gunning for Activision Blizzard, and they said it wasn't for Call of Duty. They kept saying that it wasn't, but it seems to be the only positive thing that's come out of it so far. They kept saying that they wanted to do mobile gaming. I have not seen any direction on that. No traction on that. I know they have a mobile gaming store that was open because of the way iOS is set up. They now can have one, but they
they
aren't
do,
getting any of
and, and
that.
I and I say that to be I'm being a little smart here when I say that because, and I'm sorry to cut you off
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
I feel like they announced it, we talked about it, and what happened after that? And we keep hearing that there's new hardware coming the end of the year. Well, they've got the new, I don't want to call them new Xboxes, the white models coming out in October. Is that the new hardware? We've heard rumors of new experiences coming. I believe Phil Spencer's words were new experiences by the end of the year. So, Phil, are you giving us a handheld?
They have to
Because
deliver something because they're not delivering games right now. So um, to put put a period on this,
uh,
Microsoft needs to come out hopefully this fall and say, here's our direction going forward, and here are the steps and the things that we've concretely started building towards that. Right now, it just seems kind of rudderless. Like, oh, we were the dog that chased the car. We got the car. Now what? It's like, all right, well, show us gamers what we can hope to see. Because again, Sony's plan is to just keep giving you hardware, and keep giving you games. They've been very steadfast about that over the last 3 generations, and they've delivered on it. Whether or not that expensive new PlayStation is worth it is an entirely different question. The idea that their plan is hardware and games, and they keep doing hardware and they keep doing games, you know where you stand
mm-hmm.
with Sony. You know what to expect. Microsoft is maybe TV, maybe set top box, maybe cloud gaming, which didn't pan out, maybe streaming. We have a streaming service. We're going to do mobile, and it's like, well, where is the through line in all this? What am I going to expect next year? What am I paying for time and time again? Anyway,
Why
let's
why
move on.
should a
Go ahead.
parent why should a parent let a child put an Xbox on a Christmas list this year and go purchase it?
Very good question, Microsoft. It's on you to answer it. Moving on. Stop belaboring the point of Microsoft being bad at gaming. Let's see if they can be good at AI. Microsoft had just announced a new wave of Copilot features, again, intended for businesses. We have, I think it is, oh, okay. Yeah, it's, again, the new wave of features kind of, they include Copilot pages, which is a new feature that acts as a collaborative canvas, allowing users to create and share pages easily within Microsoft 365 ecosystem. It's designed to enhance teamwork. It's kind of like if you were to take Microsoft's concepts and envision of Microsoft Loop and their components, it's kind of components on steroids. You're able to kind of put information that you create via Copilot in any Microsoft app. So if it's in Word and you created a whole resume via Copilot, you can take that entire section and put it into Word or put it into another Microsoft app. If you created slides, you can take those entire slides and drop them into something else. Uh, they're also going to be supporting Python, which is big for code lovers. It will make it easier to integrate scripts and automate tasks directly within your document or spreadsheet. And again, it's a big win for data analysts and developers who rely on Python for their workflows. It's also integrating ChatGPT's 4.0, which I believe is the latest version of that. Um, it's dubbed, ChatGPT 4.0. It's now part of Copilot. The upgrade brings more advanced natural language processing capabilities, making interactions with Copilot even more intuitive. So you can basically just type full on paragraphs in full detail of what it is you want versus trying to guess the keywords or the catchphrases that you think will produce specific AI results. Other updates include the new narrative builder, which is for PowerPoint. And that's basically you start zero from scratch with no ideas, no slides, anything, and just start typing into PowerPoint what you want to design, and it will give you a template essentially based on that, which is great. Saves people a lot of time for brainstorming. You kind of just plug and play your own images and obviously content that is necessary in there. You also get a new synthesizing feature from Teams, which I think is big, which basically will do a summarization of chats and meetings. So again, and it will summarize the entire thing in chronological order. So if you start creating uh, content or information based on a meeting, so say David and I start talking about, hey, we want to hop on um Teams to discuss our next podcast, and we started talking about this in chat, and we started dropping in notes and things that we want to add to the podcast in that chat. It will synthesize that, create a summary of that, as well as the meeting itself that we have that actually talked about and went over all that detail. So that's going to be pretty big. Outlook is getting a new prioritize my inbox. I feel like they prioritize their inbox every 6 months or so, but now they're doing it with Copilot, which will basically you can type in prioritize my inbox, and it'll summon the AI to kind of basically show results that incorporate filtering, flags, and then it will give you a summarization as to why it chose those. So I'm assuming with that, you'll be able to give some feedback to say, hey, I know that what you think of my credit card bill should be in my inbox, but I take care of that separately. Just give me the news or my newsletters that come in first, or things from my kids' school that come in first. Like, you'll be able to kind of sort through that eventually. OneDrive is getting support for repositories. So again, if you're a developer, this is going to be great because you'll be able to do searches and be able to summarize files in OneDrive as well. And then lastly, Microsoft Word will get support for both web and local content when you're searching in there. So if you're, I believe if you're in Microsoft Word and you do like one of those quick searches, you can start to pull up information from both your local files and the web as far as reference stuff that you might need to put in if you're, doing a long-term paper or you're doing any type of research. And then you'll also get a on-canvas start experience, which will basically draft up Word templates for you. That'll be a little more in depth and a little more engaging than the current templates that I believe are provided in Word, which are just kind of static. So those are the new features for uh, Copilot for business, basically. But these are all available for people who have a Microsoft 365 account or I believe a school account. You can get some of those. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm a big supporter of what's going on here, and I'm coming from the guy, as I've mentioned before, that was not a AI fan when this first came out. Um, I didn't like anybody's AI, be it Google, be it Microsoft Copilot. I just didn't. I didn't see the adoption, and I still don't see the adoption on the consumer level. But as far as this goes, as far as business, yes, I'm going to admit I use the Copilot button on my PC daily, many times, for business purposes. I am a big supporter of Microsoft fleshing out the Copilot for Business ecosystem. I'm hopeful that Google and Microsoft and anybody else producing these AI bots and technologies and language models are seeing that businesses want them. Consumers, I don't feel are there yet. We do have these nice Copilot PCs, or at least that's what they're named with the Copilot button. I don't think consumers are purchasing them because they're Copilot compatible. I think they're purchasing them because they're solid PCs up to this point. As you mentioned in your Dell review this week, and I've got a Lenovo 7X article going up today if I can get the finishing buttons put on that one. But yes, keep going, Microsoft. One thing I will bring up that I have noticed when I read your post this week, I decided to do something a little different with my podcast headlines. This week, I know you guys don't see the notes that we make, but I handed Copilot our URLs and said, look, summarize this. Copilot did a fantastic job. I literally took what Copilot did and pasted it in just to give us some talking points, for our podcast here. But I also tried it with Google's Gemini Pro. Would not do it. That I thought was interesting. Gemini cannot read URLs yet, and says it is a privacy concern is something that they're brought up. So interesting, and I think that's something that's going to have to be tackled in the AI world. The gap between AI language models, what Google does, what Microsoft does, what Meta does, what Amazon does. If you're in the Microsoft ecosystem as we are, I'm a fan of what's going on here.
How dare you forget about Apple Intelligence, my friend? Even though Apple forgot about it and launched phones that didn't have any of it on there.
Apple Intelligence. Well, Apple Intelligence does not have to mean AI, my friend, and I'm going
That
to
is
leave it at
exactly what it means. How dare you, sir? Speaking of which,
that.
let's talk about Apple. We're going to be talking about their watch getting sleep apnea approval. which is big. I think it's big for anybody who may be suffering from it or think that they might even have it to begin with. Give us some
Yes,
detail on that.
that's really part of the reason I wanted to put this out there. I know a lot of people have to use CPAP machines and take medicine for sleep apnea, and Apple has always been on the forefront of bringing health features to their watches and phone devices. I cannot knock them for that. And this week we had the sleep apnea feature is approved by the FDA in the new Apple Watch Series 10, 9, and Ultra 2. And to give somebody some idea who may not know what sleep apnea is, you're sleeping and you stop breathing for a certain period of time, your watch will alert you that that happened. So you can get to your physician and you can get your diagnosis and get that taken care of. So, Apple, I'm giving you props for what you're doing here. I know you have done things that have helped people with heart problems. My father has heart problems, so I'm glad to, see that you're doing these things. I don't have a Series 10 watch, but I do know a family member that is getting one. So I will get them to turn on the sleep apnea feature, and hopefully they don't get any alerts, but maybe, excuse me, maybe we can see what those alerts might look like. That would be
Yeah,
interesting to know.
I don't have much to add to it. I agree with you. I'm glad that they got it. And they got it in time. I have recently just got a new Pixel watch that has a very similar feature, but you need to have it running for a few days. I'm assuming this Apple version will have to do it as well. So check back in next week, ladies and gentlemen. I will let you know if I need to get a sleep apnea machine, a CPAP machine myself, because I'm testing it. I want to see the. I think I have one more day to go for to kind of track everything. But I'm glad that these watches are making it easier. It's unfortunate that this is the state of our healthcare as a general. Like we should be able to just afford to go get these tests. It should be offered
Yes.
free. We shouldn't have to rely on our watches and things like that because it costs us, relatively speaking, like a watch is 200-300 bucks versus the test itself, which could cost you thousands depending on what kind of healthcare you have. That is my only knock for that. But I am glad that there is an alternative for people, and that this is it. With that being said, let's move on to some other good news, and it has to do with Intel. Before you spit up your water, yes, Intel does have some good news. I was also shocked myself to hear about this. Um, Intel has basically uh, kind of curbed their bad week that they had last week and the week before that by telling their investors, we have spun off our Foundry. For those of you who have been under a rock or don't know what a Foundry is, basically it is Intel's pitch to basically create and fabricate other people's chips, not just Intel chips. We mentioned this several times over the past few years that this is part of Intel's big pivot. They lost on mobile. They weren't able to manufacture chips for mobile, so they lost an entire section of new computing when it comes to that. They are in the server sector, but they're being squeezed out by other competitors in the fringes. Nvidia, Qualcomm specifically, are kind of, and then we're also just having uh, cloud providers, cloud service providers like Microsoft and Amazon create their own chips to kind of do a full stack for their customers and whatnot. So that's not very good for Intel when their only business is making chips, and other people are starting to make chips that perform just as well as theirs. So they have been kind of on a decline because of those factors, and also missing some roadmaps and having some lawsuits based on their chip performance over the years. But this week they said, "Hey, uh, our foundry, Intel Foundry Services (IFS), will become an independent subsidiary subsidiary to enhance transparency and efficacy." And that's a big thing because now they'll be able to, I think I mentioned last week, get that government grant for the CHIPS Act because I know it's rhetorically speaking a sleight of hand where they're saying we are no Intel, and Intel IFS is its own business now. You can trust that business to do well with the, I think it's $18 billion in grants and loans that they would be getting. because it isn't part of Intel, which was suffering earlier last week. This new business is entirely different. You can trust it. But they'll also be able to expound on that. They'll be able to do rounds of funding independently of Intel. They'll be able to get new businesses because if you are someone who wants Intel to make your chips and you or fabricate your chips, not make them, but fabricate your design, you don't have to worry about Intel stealing it because Intel isn't the IFS. It isn't the separate business. So if you're trusting, if you're someone like Qualcomm, and you're saying, you know what, we can't make it at the scale we need because these chips are just flying off the shelves. We didn't have the warehouses in place. We didn't have any of the manufacturing in place to do it, but Intel does, and we just need to start pumping out our own chips. You can give them your designs, and they will create that for you, and it won't be an issue of Intel looking over their shoulder and how do they make that chip so efficient? Because it's a whole different business. And that's where they'll be able to kind of pitch this idea of, hey, give us your business and we can keep building on that. The other thing that they did was this week is that they extended their partnership with AWS, which is huge because AWS is basically the cloud leader in cloud services and software right now. And so securing a multi-billion-dollar deal for providing chips for AWS is huge. They'll be using Intel's 18A fabrication process, and they'll be customizing Xenon 6 processors for this AWS partnership. I believe they just by getting the deal alone, it will be infused with $7.8 billion to expand the data centers operations in Ohio, and another $10.3 billion they're investing in the state to help kind of facilitate all of that manufacturing that should be coming in thanks to this contract. So again, it's big that they got that. They're also, getting they were also awarded this week a $3 billion direct funding from the CHIPS Act. So again, they told the U.S. government, we're not the fumbling, bumbling Intel. We're the brand new Intel Foundry system that you can trust. So we'll see how this goes going forward. My only note before I spit it to you is that, again, we've said that Intel has had issues as far as the quality assurance of the chips as well as the roadmaps. And I wonder if this is going to affect AWS potentially down the road. Who knows for server stuff? What are your thoughts on this whole turnabout phase? Because again, the stock market loved it. Their stock bounced back a little bit upon this news.
Intel is looking recovery options. And I don't mean that from the point of, they're going out of business. They're trying to recover from the chip issues with the blowing up of PCs, with the ability to not keep up with what Qualcomm has done, to not keep up with what Apple has done. They have recently produced make sure I get this right, the Core 2 Ultra chips that are just now out in PCs that, the reviews have been a little more positive so far on those chips, that, those chips are hanging in there. Intel has lost money for years. I think, that's a known thing, and they continue to lose money. Intel is not going out of business tomorrow. I don't want to, put that in anybody's head. Intel makes a lot of things. They make chips in your televisions. They make chips in your phones. They make network chips. They make a lot of things that's going to keep Intel afloat. But I think, to your point, when you have a chip foundry and you can partner with other people, it gives you the ability to peek over their shoulder, as you mentioned, and go, how are they doing this? They're no threat to us because they're part of the foundry. And it, in the end, could save Intel? No. Lead to better collaboration? Instead of AMD standing in a room, Intel standing in a room, Qualcomm standing in a room, and Apple standing in a room, and they all pointing water guns at each other? I think that,
Right.
I think this will help that. I think this is a good thing. I think that's why the stock market saw the bounce back that it did. Now, here's the thing. Can Intel keep its promise and follow through with this, and it not just be words on paper to save the CHIPS Act funding that they have risked now losing?
Yeah, that's again key point. I can't stress this enough. There was a part in this piece that we wrote up is that the Intel Foundry leadership will remain intact with no changes, and it will continue to report to Gelsinger, which is the CEO of Intel currently. But the Foundry will create an operating board of independent directors that will govern the subsidiary and support its focus on driving greater transparency, optimization, accountability across the business. Intel products, Intel chips, design business will remain a source of competitive differentiation and strength. My fear was that first sentence is that the leadership will remain in place, and so far the leadership hasn't delivered. Again, this transition has been 5 years in the making,
Yeah.
4 years, 4.5 years in the making. I would have liked to or been more reassured if I was an investor. Again, I'm an armchair commentator, so take what I say with the hugest grain of salt. I don't know business very well, especially when it comes to Intel chips, but the idea of new leadership for a new business versus old leadership at a new business is something that I would have been worried about, because again, these same people that were making decisions for the foundry that was currently under Intel are going to still be making decisions for this new foundry that is now reporting to the CEO of Intel, but is working independently. I don't know how different their mindsets are as far as the way that they, again, pursue some of these new rounds of funding, the way that they stress the roadmaps. Are they going to be still very lax, as you and I have been discussing? Are they more stringent? Do they are they trying to nail that 3 nanometer processing a goal that everyone goes after? Or are they just more like, hey, we can punch out a bunch of 4 and 5 if we need to, because that's what we're good at? I mean, again, all hearsay. We will see how they deliver. We will see if the stock bounce that they just got is well rewarded in the next 6 to 12 months or whatever over the next year, and how this business can accrue new business. Again, neither of us here are CEOs or business owners of chipsets or servers or anything like that. So we would just be on the watch and the lookout. With that being said, let's move on to Microsoft having a Windows app. You wanted to write about this? You want to talk about it? What do we got?
Well, I think this is kind of goes maybe a little bit with what's going on in the chip world. We got that thing out there called cloud, and clouds are great, but making them easier to access is even better. So Microsoft now has this Windows app. That's what they're calling it. It works for Mac OS, iOS, iPad OS, and there is a preview version for Android. It is a unified app that connects you to Windows services such as Windows 365, Azure Virtual Desktop, Remote Desktop, Microsoft DevBox, and others. So I think this is a good thing. I work in the cloud. I hate having to have an app for this one, an app for this one. Oh, this one connects via the web browser. This one connects with the web browser, but you got to cross your fingers twice and press enter 3 times before it connects and gets you logged in. So or if I'm on an Apple device, I've got to have this piece. If I'm on a Windows device, I got to have this piece. Oh, and that tablet I want to take with me on vacation, I better make sure I've got that piece. So I'm happy to see that Microsoft is doing this. I know this is a short, quick cover, but I think it's important to show that Microsoft is making this app to make its cloud services more universally accessible no matter the device you're on. And I think that is key for cloud computing. Now, does this lead us down the road of Windows in the cloud? Could be the stepping stone for that. You can go get cloud PCs from Windows in their business division, and you can pay the monthly fee for that. Now, do we get to the point of consumer cloud PCs readily available from Microsoft? Now, no. In the future, perhaps.
Yeah, it's you and I have talked about this. For those, again, we're just catching up on this. The Windows app is as it sounds. You basically download this app from your respective Play Store or iOS store, App Store, wherever you're getting this from, maybe an APK, and you load it onto a device, and you're able to, if you have a Microsoft 365 account or a school account, stream your Windows desktop setup and all your savings, preferences, and docs that are saved via the cloud. Again, this app is basically a replacement for remote desktop. To David's point,
Yes.
remote desktop was finicky at best. Depends on what device you have. It worked great on PCs that already had virtualization uh, architectures built into them. It didn't work as well on more modern smartphone and tablet devices, but I believe this new app is designed to obviously do that. So again, if you are someone who has an iOS device, you use a PC, you forgot to pack it for whatever trip you ran to or for whatever meeting you need to, you'll be able to basically take your phone or your iPad or whatever you have, whatever electronic device you have that can download this app, and plug it in and stream it. Again, granted you have the account, and pull up your desktop again with all your preferences and files, and navigate that to kind of get whatever work done you need or put up any presentation. This again will just lead to us having to carry fewer devices. If you're someone who has a Galaxy Z Fold or the new Pixel Fold or the OnePlus Open, whatever it is, and you're saying, hey, you know what? I just want to carry this thing with me. It does what I need to when I'm on the smartphone. I don't necessarily want a laptop just to go for the weekend to an event, but I do have to answer an email that does require that I dig into a file that I can't really navigate on this tiny screen the way that I need to. And it's on my PC. You'll be able to use this app to go ahead and do that. And to your point of this being something offered in the future, I think there's an issue with licensing that Microsoft has with it would basically nosedive PC sales or the Windows licensing to Windows PC OEMs, Lenovo, HP, Dell, stuff like that, because they pay for the license to have Windows, whereas we don't necessarily pay upfront for the box copy of Windows anymore. They'll have to figure out a way to kind of navigate that tiptoe dance around, allowing us to basically subscribe to Microsoft 365 and get this. So you'll get a version of your own desktop virtualized. You'll probably get all of Office 365. You'll get Xbox included with this. There'll be a future where $40 gets you all your Microsoft stuff, and you'll be able to kind of access it wherever you want to. But how do you tell your business partners who make the devices that we still currently use to be like, hey, you got to be cool with this, man? Like, I'm taking money out of your hand to give to the customer. Which again, I'm the customer, and I'm like, please give me, give me, give me. But you have to figure out a way to make that transition and make it palatable for everybody going forward. So I think there's still a ways away before consumers are able to access this as easily as businesses will. But we'll also have to see how this app works over time too, because it just came out this week. So we'll see how it works and what kind of connections you need, stuff like that.
Just to give people an idea, now I'm doing this off the cuff. I have pulled up here the Windows 365 plans and pricing for business. If you're looking at the Microsoft virtual PCs, now they start on the very bottom end with two vCPUs, only 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of storage. That'll run you $32 a month. So, to get up to something that I might consider usable, that's 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage, that's $54 a month. Now, if you're looking, 16 gigs of RAM, you've got 16 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, $70. 256 gigs of storage is $79 for these cloud PCs, and they go on up to 16 vCPUs, 64 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte of storage is $319 a month. So these things can get, from the Microsoft platform, can get very expensive. Now the enterprise pricing, we won't even talk about that. They get right on up there. These are for
This this
you
could
know
this could potentially be a Amazon Prime situation where you charge people $100, 112 or whatever, to have maybe one or two VCs essentially accessible to you, in addition to 2 terabytes of OneDrive storage and the top tier version of Xbox uh, Game Pass or whatever, and Office 365 with all of the features. I think there is a world where I think some people would want that. And then basically all you have to do at that point is, change out whatever cloud laptop you have, if it's a Surface that has, Qualcomm chip on it or something like that, every 5 or 6 years. but you get all the other stuff basically tied to you versus tied to the device. Again, I think there's a role for that. I'm not saying it's a
Well,
huge one.
if you think about it this way, now you've got to have a certain amount of internet connection to make
Yeah,
a cloud PC a cloud PC usable, and basically you've got to have upload with a reasonable. Doesn't have to be gaming style Call of Duty latency, but you've got to have reasonable latency so your mouse isn't jumping across the screen. But now you've got to remember, Microsoft is managing the hardware side of this. They're managing the internet connection too, that goes out, that's going to download things and run your browser. So if you're a business out there with enough seats, I'm sure at some point of seats there is a discount. If you're a business out there with enough seats that can get these inexpensive cloud PCs or some other type of terminal that runs Windows that you don't have to maintain, it's just a dumb terminal with an internet
right.
connection, then I can see a business taking advantage of that. Now, I'm gonna throw one more curveball. When the Microsoft Cloud has a problem, which they have had a few problems in the last 6 months,
What? Get out of here.
your entire business is shut down and
Yeah.
could be at risk. So keep that in mind when you think about these cloud PCs, and make sure you
Sounds
back
like
them
somebody
up.
back in Linux over there. That's what it sounds like. You got a Linux head in this chat. Uh, With
Well,
that being said, we're going to move on to, because we're talking about subscriptions and pricing. Here's an offer that Microsoft has. And again, only for business, unfortunately. But they do provide a subscription free version of Office with an asterisk.
well,
And it sounds great. Put your wallets away. It's not for you. Bad you.
okay.
No free Office for you. We get Microsoft offering its LTSC, which I believe stands for Long-Term Servicing Channel version of Office 2024. It'll be coming out, I believe, next month, and it is an Office suite aimed at commercial and government customers, essentially. So again, these people already have subscriptions, or at least buy in bulk volume, so they get discounts and things like that. They have connected customer service support with Microsoft that they probably pay per month. So this isn't the old days where you go out, where a business would go out and buy a box copy and then hand it to their employee and say, "Hey, this one is for you. This one's for you. This one's for you," and we no longer pay for it. It's more like, I have, I bought a bunch of Microsoft 365 licenses, and I'm allowing you to get a version that doesn't connect to the internet. You don't have to pay. I don't necessarily have to pay the per month fee for it, but I pay. I also pay for servicing. I also pay for IT support and implementation. So it's a whole different component for those businesses. So keep that in mind. But what you do get, like I said, is a version of Microsoft 365 that doesn't connect to the internet, won't be getting updates. You won't necessarily be bugged or bogged down with any of that stuff for about, I believe, 5 years. And you get all the updates up until the point that the uh, instance is installed on your device. So if you bought in October, it's like upcoming October, you get all the updates until whatever Microsoft released in October. From that point going forward, though, you will not get updates. You will not get service for any of that. You will get security support, I believe they said, for about 5 years. Some of the key features for this version of Office that will be included, again, when it is released, is you'll get the new Excel functions, over a dozen new text and array functions. You get an enhanced Outlook, which obviously we just talked about, improving the search and being able to create meetings and other options in Outlook. You get some accessibility improvements, better tools for making documents, slideshows, and emails more accessible. Performance and security, general improvements. Office works pretty well, I believe, for most instances on most devices. And then you'll, like I said, you're getting support for 5 years for fixed life cycle policy, which will be deployed alongside any of your Microsoft 365 apps, allowing for easier management and hybrid environments for the IT support guys. So again, once they get this and say you have an issue for whatever reason with your install, they will be able to tap Microsoft specifically and get some help and support with that for the next 5 years for this specific release. And then again, 5 years down the road, they can say, we want to re-up and get the latest version We didn't have to deal with anything that Microsoft delivered over the last 5 years that may or may not have broken our systems or broken the things that we do. The reason why Microsoft is offering this again isn't to be nostalgic and say, "Hey, remember the box copies of Office?" This is being offered because there are jobs where you cannot connect to the internet for security reasons specifically, and so
Yes.
or you are dealing with businesses that have specific, very niche hardware that cannot be updated, will not be updated over time, but they need access to some of the latest technology still. There's no reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So these are why these versions are being developed. This release provides a lock and time version for people who are familiar with productivity tools. And like I said, it'll be released, I believe, next month. So what are your thoughts on Microsoft doing its LTSC 2024?
I think this is smart. That they've provided something here that I think a niche group of people need, and there's more businesses out there that would rather not connect to the internet, I think, than we realize.
Mm-hmm.
Cybersecurity is a big thing these days, and I think, would I like to see a nostalgia value and say, hey, here's a consumer version of this? Sure. That's the nostalgia guy in me. I remember the white box with the big black thick lettering at the bottom that said office. Every time you walked around, and Microsoft always had the attractive packaging and could at least get you to pick up the box. And there's part of me that missed those boxes. I'm gonna be honest with you. There's
Mm-hmm.
part of me that miss going into the Best Buys, the EB games, and the Babbages for those that are old enough to remember those. And pick up those boxes. But we're not buying. People don't buy software in boxes because if we did that, we got to go back to CDs and DVDs, and I don't think we want to do that.
No, especially if they're
So
scratched.
exactly. So good on Microsoft here. I would love to see maybe some sort of home student limited version, maybe for the fixed income, low income homes. I would love to see something there, where students and parents have the access that they need for education and to do their jobs. I think that could be worked out, but it's a start. Good move, Microsoft. Let's
Yeah.
keep this up.
And again, this isn't brand new news. Microsoft has been doing this, I believe, for the last 3 years, but it is now being generally available. So they've been doing this in kind of a public preview. Like, hey, we've been testing it out with several hundred, several thousand businesses. Now we're going to just make it free for any business that has access to a Microsoft 365 license or student account. So now it's generally available. And again, we said, Microsoft likes to test that business stuff first. Who knows if this will trickle down to consumer versions down the line. Maybe you can get Microsoft, Office 3, instead of Office 365, you get Office 2029, and that is the only version you get for the next 5 years. Maybe they'll start going back to that. Last bit of news is Microsoft's new Fluent illustrations are more 3D and playful. This is a story I read this morning that had me kind of do a double take. I read it from The Verge. Our boy Tom Warren was my first lead into this news. But basically, Microsoft is doing what it does every, I don't know, 3 to 4 years. They're getting a little bit itchy when it comes to design, and they want to try something new. And this new version is going to be more colorful and more playful. It's a kind of a take and an expansion on some of the new icons you may have seen for the Office suite, where they have some of that translucent backgrounds, but they do offer way more color. They're more clear than what they used to be. If we do a quick history, those of you who have been Windows users for a while may remember Windows 7 being similar to what we're showing on screen. For those of you listening, again,
Yeah.
picture the Windows 7 icons, so to speak. I think Tom Warren at The Verge referred to it as skeuomorphism returned. It's not as one for one as it was in iOS, where a tape recorder looked like the old tape recorder from the 80s if they were trying to indicate some kind of playing media. It's not like that, but it is definitely a little more descriptive from the flat, Fluent slash old Metro designs of past. Again, we had Metro, which was basically more iconography than anything, and they basically drained all the color of everything. Everything was a matte or one single color version of an icon that used a lot of lines, and if you didn't understand what the lines meant, there was definitely big typography that explained it. Then Microsoft went kind of tried to split the difference when they went with the new version of Metro 2.0, and then they went even further with Windows 10. I forget what was the design language called for Windows 10. I forget the specifics of it. Um,
Oh man,
but they basically merged some of the Metro stuff, moved a little
yeah.
bit, moved further away from that to more iconography versus typography. And then, like I said, the last 2.5 years with the new Office stuff, you're starting to see kind of a departure from that in specific. Uh, with all that being said, Microsoft basically, and this is, we were discussing this off mic, I find it kind of ironic that they spent all this time, all this money, and they said they had all this research. And, again, people's design choices change, but according to them, quote, our study showed that while our illustrations could be described as colorful, inclusive, and genial on a surface level, they were received with consumers' culture as uninteresting and emotionless. And this is explained by the Microsoft design team in a blog post that they were outlining about these new illustrations. The flat vectorized style that was once hugely popular across the industry was now communicating suboptimally and potentially evoking ideas and themes that were misaligned with our company values. I don't know what these new company values are that are in relation to design, but
I was going to say,
hey,
what are those?
but Microsoft at least said people don't like what we're doing, so we're going to change it up. And this is the direction they're going in. The new style is supposed to be embracing vibrant universality and fluent illustration. Um, their core components for these, or at least the core ideas for invoking this, is to be human-centered designs. The illustrations are designed to be more human, vibrant, and dimensional, reflecting Microsoft's brand principles. Semiotic analysis, a study of signs and symbols, revealed that previous illustrations were seen as uninteresting and emotionless, but now these new ones will have, a little bit more fun and flair to them. Collaboration and inclusion is another thing they want to do, and cohesion across all products. So they want to use all these across the product. For those of you who are unable to see what's on our screen currently, these designs do illustrate a bit more of what something does, just from a pure icon perspective. You don't need necessarily text to understand what this thing is meant to convey. Like they have the envelope with a little asterisk at the top corner of it to indicate that, hey, you have an email that has been unread. We all understand what the notification dot looks like. That's what they're kind of applying with this. There is and another one, there is a piece of paper that's folded that also has a paperclip on it to kind of illustrate the attachment aspects of, if you're attaching something to a document or to an email or whatnot. They have a paintbrush in one of them as well. They have circles and squares that basically signify like a Teams meeting. If you were in a four-person meeting, it's just easier to see these things with this new design. But I know that you're a bit hesitant when we were talking about this. I'm like, what are your thoughts on this new idea of design?
Don't. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to play the I'm not sure game. It reminds me of older versions of Mac and Mac OS back before. Sorry, Apple, but back before we took Apple so seriously. Back when you saw them in classrooms, and that's really the only place you saw a Mac. This is what some of these, colorful pastel type icons are telling me. Um, Back to our business customers that we've talked about a lot in this podcast. Do they want to look at these pastel type drawings every day? That's a question, that we have to ask. Apple is looking more polished and more, black, gray, blue, simple colors, and their interface is simple. Are we Somebody's going to see this and mock Microsoft and mock Windows for something else, I'm afraid. It's not as somebody's going to say, well, they've gone off the edge with the pastels, they've gone off the edge with a cartoon type look. I'm not saying they are. I'm saying I don't think this is going to be widely adopted as, oh, this is cool looking. Look what Microsoft has done. Every time Microsoft changes the look and feel of the operating system, too much, we get pushback. There's going to be pushback here, I think. and we always make ourselves back to a Windows 7-ish type of feel. And I think that's just what people like. We'll just have to wait and see how this plays out.
Yeah, this is a shifting of the Overton window. I believe that
Yeah.
Microsoft's design team will go like they did with Metro. They will go too far. And with Windows 10, they will find a balance. Like you said, there'll be pushback and they will find a happy medium. I personally don't really care about many of these icons. Most of the icons on my desktop are from apps that are already on my taskbar
Mm-hmm.
that have been provided by, your, Photoshop, your Adobe's, your, Google's, things like that. And they all have their own icon design. When I get into, when I get into the file explorer and things like that, if Microsoft can blend these to make it look like they belong, and that again, my issue always with Microsoft is that it is half-hearted with these deliveries. With Metro, I
Mm-hmm.
was bought in for Metro, but there were still elements, as we discussed, from Windows 7 in there, which clash with that. When you remember when we had the Windows RT, everything was Metro on one version of the desktop, and then when you got to the full desktop, you were back in Windows 7, so to speak. And
It was like they skinned it. That's all they did.
right. And the same thing with Windows 10. There are elements from Windows 7. There's Windows XP. There's all kinds of different Windows design philosophies all over the place. If they decided to flush the entire system and use these, then I will get used to it as long as it's consistent across the board. When I go into control panel, I want to see these icons. When I go into settings, I want to see these icons. When I go into file explorer, I want to see these icons. When I get into a context menu, I want to see these icons. Again, they may not be the most appealing to my eyes, but they're consistent. I don't want to see half of these icons in places and the same functions be displayed by different icons from different eras of Windows. So that's my only gripe for right now. But we'll see. Like you said, I do expect pushback as well. But hopefully, we don't get any pushback in the comments where people can talk about this podcast. Let us know your thoughts on these. We're wrapping this podcast up. I want to thank everybody for joining us for another week of Microsoft news. We are sorry that it hasn't been more titillating, but we expect more crazy news coming out from Microsoft in the coming weeks. But we do appreciate you guys hanging with us for the news that is here. Where can people comment to you about this new design?
David PAJ 1978. That's on the Twitter, X, threads. Come over, hang out. I do a lot of gaming, so if you're looking at a gaming partner, head over there. We'll see if we have anything in common.
Yeah, you can find me at Mindhead1 on Twitter. You can find me at Kareem Anderson on Threads and Instagram. To David's point, we had a long conversation before we started the podcast about Flight Simulator. So if you want to talk to David about the upcoming Flight Simulator 2024, which we do have a full write-up on our website about it. There's also a trailer for the new game. It is expansive. There are 4 different versions of it. There are rigs that are being, sold and set up for this thing. David is big on the simulators, not the Sims game. But if you want to talk to him about that kind of stuff, please reach out to him. Or you can mention down in the comments, write it on the comments in any of the articles that we write. But we do want to be more engaging with you guys. We're also on TikTok as well. We will communicate with you guys there. Until then, go ahead, touch some grass. Enjoy your weekend, and we will see you next week for more news.
See you guys next week. Have a good weekend.